Started. Double checking with Sherry that City TV is ready for us.
Yes, they are.
All right, very good. Well, it is Monday, May 4th, 2020, 5:01 p.m., and I will call this meeting of the Lansing City Council's Committee of the Whole to order and ask that our clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Here.
Councilmember Garza.
Here.
Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Betts.
Yep, here.
6 present. There's a quorum of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First things first, housekeeping on how the meeting will run today. Councilmember Brian Jackson is zooming in right now. I just got notification he's logging in. We are going to use the raise hand function to make sure that I can see when you're doing that. And if you don't remember how to do that, let me know by saying that now. But we have had no trouble in the past with people Zoom bombing us. So I'm going to let you guys do that feature without making a co-host so that it's easier to make sure everyone gets called on. Because I think I missed a couple folks last week and I apologize for that. First thing first, we need a motion to approve the minutes from April 27th, 2020. Vice President Hussein.
So moved.
Minutes have been moved. Is there any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll on the approval of the April 27th, 2020 minutes?
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar. I'm not sure if she's present yet.
Not yet, no.
Okay. The minutes from April 27th were approved as presented 7-0.
Very good. The next item on our agenda is public comment, and members of the public wishing to speak should do so by using the raise hand function. You do that on a Mac computer with Option Y. You do that on a Windows computer with Alt Y. If you're participating on your phone, you do *9. And if you are participating on a tablet, you click on the participants option, and then there's a raise hand function there. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to raise your hands before we open it up or close public comment. 30 seconds starting now. Again, I'll just remind you to raise your hand. It's Option Y, Alt Y on a Windows PC, Option Y on a Mac, *9 if you're calling in on the phone, and then push the raise hand button under the participants menu on your tablet. 30 seconds, public comment closing, and we're closed. Thank you very much. The first item is presentations on the budget, and we are continuing with presentations from the department, finance, and our CSO. So if you all want to turn on your cameras, I'm going to make you all co-hosts so you can share your presentations with us. Jake, Shelby, welcome.
Good evening.
Oh.
So just quick run of show for today. You can see we have a lot of department heads that have also joined us for the meeting. So the plan is Jake's going to run through the departmental budgets more in detail, kind of line by line, answer any major questions you guys may have as far as changes from last year to this year. And then, of course, if you have specific questions, we have all the department heads on and able to help answer those. We did have a few questions submitted ahead of time, so we'll make sure we address those throughout the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jake to get started.
Before we do, Jake and Shelby, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm going to. Folks, it's been discussed with Vice President Hussein and myself that if we do need to call more committee of the whole meetings between now and then to have more discussion as a council, we're certainly open to that possibility. I don't want you to think that we're done talking about the budget because it's not on the schedule. There's more budget hearings and such scheduled, but I want you all to have an opportunity to really work through this as a council, as a committee. So don't feel like this is the only time we'll be able to do this. We are prepared to add more meetings to the schedule. We just didn't want to do it without making sure it was absolutely necessary. So I will turn it back over to Jake and Shelby now. Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you.
let's see. I'll share at my screen. Is everyone able to see this?
Yes.
Excellent. So, starting with our general fund, I hope that you've all been able to receive the line item budget here and that you all have a copy of it. That should have been provided a number of months ago. It is in front of you on the screen just so you have a visual access to it. A couple of items to start with. So our first major revenue line is our property tax levy. This includes our operating millage as well as roads, police, fire, and parks. We have some negative amounts which are for tax chargebacks and our tax agreements with surrounding communities and townships. And so that comes out to about 45,600,000 all combined. Moving on to income taxes, we came up with this estimate in collaboration with the department treasurer, and this estimate predates the COVID-19 emergency as we've discussed. We are currently working together to revise this estimate, but at this point, what we agree to mostly is that there is a significant amount of uncertainty. And so at the time of proposing this budget, that amount was 39.2 million combined. Looking over at revenue sharing, constitutional and statutory sales tax payments are the majority of this category. These estimates were updated by the state in February, and another update is expected later this month. We anticipate that under the current circumstances that we expect probably about a 15% reduction in this category. This fire protection line refers to state-owned facilities for fire protection. We do not receive property taxes for those facilities, and so the state is very kindly reimburses us some of those lost revenues. The same for local community PPT reimbursement, which is for exemptions for property taxes. The Board of Water return on equity is a fairly easy line to explain now. It was formerly a percentage of equity from the Board of Water and Light. Right now, it is a 25 million flat rate that will be approved at the end of the month. Moving on into licenses and permits. Business licenses come to a total of 690,000. The majority of this is the medical marijuana license fees. Going down further, we have building permits, which come out to 23,000. We have non-business licenses, which come out to 54,100. The cable TV franchise fee, 1.1 million. Charges for services, reimbursements. The majority of this funding comes from administrative fees to our general fund for services that we provide to our other funds. That comes out to 2.4 million. Going on to appeals and petitions, that comes out to 70,000. We also receive charges for code compliance. That comes out to 2 million. This year, we have introduced some cost recovery for some police officer patrols and coverage in our community for certain stakeholders that have requested specific access and coverage. Our public safety charges come out to a total of 4.38 million. The majority of this comes from fire ambulance services at 4.1 million. Subscriptions and information provide us a neat $1,000. Hurrah. For others, we get 40,000. Notary service provides us 1,500. Going on, recreation fees, which are coordinated with the recreation department to provide an estimate. We are expecting 560,000. And with the district court, we're expecting 1.9 million in fines and forfeitures. Moving on to the smaller ticket items, we expect 150,000 for interest and rents. We have the Montgomery Drain Code tax. Sale of fixed assets, we're expecting 100,000. Donations and contributions, 145. Other miscellaneous, 153, and 350 for transfers in. The total general fund revenues, as proposed in our initial budget, comes out to 144,684,000. Excellent. Moving on to
Jake,
general
can
fund.
we
Yes.
pause at the revenues? I see a couple questions and I had some too. So let me go with, first we'll start with, then we'll move on to expenditures. Is that all right?
Certainly.
Okay, don't want to break your cadence, but Councilmember Betts?
Thank you, Mr. President. Jake, one question for you. Thank you for the presentation today. What is the amount of revenue that we're going to be seeing from the marijuana excise tax, the state tax that is going to have some distributions to Lansing?
Yeah, so right now we don't have a clear estimate for that. That's the recreational marijuana licenses you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's currently not really budgeted in our proposal. So that will be pretty much pennies from God when we do receive it. I've not received any information about, well, maybe that's an interesting allegory to put towards that, but when we receive it, it'll be a very nice extra, but right now I'm not counting on any money.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you,
We do
Councilmember-
receive some 600,000 for medical marijuana.
Thank you, Councilmember Betts. Councilmember Wood?
Here we go. Thank you. Couple of questions, and if you can't answer them, maybe we can have the departments. I'm first one to talk about 54A District Court. Revenues that are expected from that help offset the cost of the court. So my question would be, especially when we look at that particular floor and all of the social distancing and the things, we've been looking at all of our revenues to see if there's a difference in what we will actually be capturing other than what we have proposed. Have you had those discussions with Anithia Brewer on that, or Judge Alderson, to determine what changes might need to be made because of that?
Yeah, I spoke briefly with Anithia Brewer. I had an email exchange with her today, not on the specific issue, but one of the areas that the district court is particularly interesting is it's almost its own insular body. It has its revenue source and has an expenditures. And right now it operates as a loss, and that's just the way things are for it. Right now, it is interesting to compare the revenue line for fines and forfeitures with the district court's budgetary line. And so as we expect that the costs of the district court would decrease, that would also come with the revenues decreasing, or vice versa. So as it's shut down, there's certain savings, but we also lose a revenue source. And which one is greater will impact our budget.
I'll jump in really quick too, just to clarify a little bit for Councilmember Wood here. So you're right. So obviously there's lots of services that aren't happening in addition to the courts. And so that would likely go into our fiscal year 20 final amendment that the council will see sometime early June. Once we can kind of better estimate the true impact of COVID right now and how it's going to impact all budgets, of course, in addition to courts. But the timing issue right now of not receiving funding will impact fiscal year 20. You'll see that here in the next maybe month or so. And then you're right, long term, how much will this impact the future funding? That's something we're going to have to work with the department on more carefully.
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of this might be effects that you see in the current period of several months, where we might be to some ability back to work as normal, to whatever that normal looks like going forward.
I guess my concern, and I'll state it again, is passing a budget that has expenditures as well as revenues that are projected pre-COVID. And when we know that there's going to be a decrease in both those revenues, as well as the fact that there's going to be an increase in expenses dealing with COVID. So, I would be hoping that what we would be, as we're getting close to looking at this, is seeing some realistic figures coming forward instead of just asking us to pass a budget when we know that those figures do not truly represent that. So going on, my next question has to do with the recreational fees. And I realize that that's very small in the whole scope of things, but when we look at the parks millage that's out there, and knowing that some of these revenues are not going to be coming in, it's going to have an effect on how we spend those park millages. So, as much as it might be great to have softball and all of these other things, some of these things might not be able to exist the way they have in the past. So are we having discussions with Brett as to how some of these programs might be phased in the future and what they might look like?
Yes, we actually had this exact conversation earlier today, talking with the mayor, with the administration, and we've previously been in communication with Brett and discussing the possible options as we review our budget for operations going forward in the next year. And so we have a short list of budgetary changes that we're looking at this moment. It's not quite ready, but we'll have that for you tentatively for a Monday meeting.
If I can interrupt, Jake, I see the mayor's got his hand up too, so it looks like he probably wants to answer this question.
He might have the answer.
Before I turn it over to the mayor, I do want to point out to my fellow council members too, this is probably going to be, although council is always intimately involved in drafting a budget, I think we're going to have probably an enormous task of working to evaluate what budget we send to the mayor's office based on the realities of the revenue projection. So I think we're going to have to do some work as well on our own. And the reason we're looking at old numbers is because this is the budget that's been presented to us, and we have to continue to move that process forward. We're not ready yet, I don't think, for a revised budget. It's going to be really uncomfortable from a timing perspective. The State Revenue Estimating Conference is May 15th, which is 3 days before our budget is due to the mayor, which means we have to just absolutely guess the night we pass the budget, or pass a budget we know needs to be amended on the 19th of May based on new information. And I know that's a terrible answer, but that's the answer that we're probably going to have to deal with. And the reality that we're facing is that the timing of this shutdown of our economy could not have been worse from the perspective of the city of Lansing's budgeting schedule. If we were even had a month more to go, we could have a little bit more revenue experience under our belt and information from state treasury. But the reality is a lot of these things, we're going to have to just make a good guess on what we think. I heard a 15% reduction in revenue sharing. Last week, we heard a $2 million, someone correct me if I'm wrong, reduction in our anticipated income tax for next year based on this shutdown. So we're really going to have to get together, and I hadn't talked to you about this yet, Councilmember Wood, but the Ways and Means Committee might have to meet virtually to think about this in what budget we're going to present to council for passage, because this will be very different than last year, where we negotiated and we had some changes, but by and large, the sweeping numbers were the same. So we're going to have to really, I think, nose to the grindstone as a governing body on these, with help from Jake and Shelby and the administration on what those numbers look like, because I certainly can't predict what the state's going to send us or not. But I think we're going to have to think seriously about that. And I'm sorry to go off on a tangent there. I will call on the mayor, and then we'll come back to Councilmember Wood. Mayor Shore, did you have something you wanted to clarify or add?
Yeah, on the original question, and Brett is on the line also. These are all being evaluated. We're evaluating everything. We are evaluating camps. We're evaluating softball fields. We're evaluating everything. You know, what can be done and what can't be done for safety this summer. This summer is going to be a very different summer than any other. We're looking at everything that Parks normally does. What makes sense for the kids, for the people, for those who use the parks, for those who use all of our events that are in our Lansing Living Guide, all of that. So it's not just softball. This is everything. I mean, the document I'm looking at on the screen is fees. You know, yes, we may get less in fees, but we don't really know what programming we're going to have. And it just depends on how this unfolds. But everything so far has been canceled in June and many things in July. So we're gonna navigate that. And Council President, if I can add to what you said, we're happy to work with you in any way. You know, we had a conversation, Shelby and Jake are going to mention this, we had a conversation today where we are going to look at attempting to bring you either a substitute or options that we think could help to restructure the budget a little bit, you know, in as much as we think we're going to be, we can't have a deficit budget. You know, you can't pass it, I can't agree to a deficit budget. So we're going to be providing you with either a substitute is what we had talked about for next Monday, and then you can accept what's in the substitute, you can reject it, or you can amend it, or we can provide you with a variety of options that we see, and you can adopt those or not, and add in your own potential options. And, you know, I clearly want to work with you all because we want a budget that you can pass and that I don't want to veto and things like that. So we look forward to working with you. We will have that information, I believe, by next Monday, at least a first run at it. And then when you meet on the 18th, you know, it's a legislative decision on amendments and substitutes and things. So we'll work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Wood, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
That's okay. My question would be, and whether Jake can answer this or the fire chief, I see that there's an increase in ambulance service. Is that based on a fee increase, or is that based on additional usage?
That's based on historical trends. The chief can speak if he wishes to about his own projections, but historically we've seen some pretty significant increases in ambulance fees, and plus with the current emergency, we're expecting that our ambulances will get a lot of use, unfortunately.
And how much of these projected fees are we actually receiving versus our bad debts?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Okay, we have a projection here that let's just say of 3,650,000. We have bad debts. We have people that aren't able to pay that fees. How much do we have tallied for bad debts as part of this?
Chief Mackey, go ahead.
It's about 28%, Councilmember.
28%, okay.
And the projected on the ambulances, we looked about 6 to 8% increase every year. That's just been an average trend. Now, I will say during this COVID time, our EMS calls have dropped.
Okay, thank you. Are there any new, this is back to Jake, you've gone through all of the fees and things. Are there any new fees that stand out that you need to talk to us about? I'm sorry, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
Let me pull out my budget book.
We realize that some fees go up and we're aware of that, but I mean, are there any new ones that you've anticipated that are not, that you haven't talked to us about yet?
Yeah, most of these fees are pretty standard increases. There is one fee that might look a little confusing. The Economic Development and Planning, they had a technology fee for about $10 that was included in all of their permits. They're proposing to eliminate that $10 technology fee and just include it in the base permit fee. And that will just create a simpler billing process for them. Apart from that, it seems pretty standard to me from previous years. Although you're welcome to ask any specific questions you have.
That answers those questions. I do have some questions on income tax and that. I don't know whether you want me to go into those now, President Spatafor, or you want to wait until we bring the different departments on.
Yeah, why don't, if it's all right with you, why don't we move on? I think I've got Councilmember Spitzley.
Sure.
And we'll come back to you, obviously, Councilmember Wood, but
All
Councilmember
right,
Spitzley.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Spatafor. I think I'm going to, my question relates to the revenues, particularly income tax and property tax. Last week, we had a presentation by Shelby and Jake that laid out, what the deficit would be in 2 months, loss of revenue in income tax and in state revenue. So I'm glad that the mayor is saying that, they're looking at a revised budget to send to us. We don't have a council meeting on May 11th, do we? The reason I'm asking is that if we're getting this revised budget in anticipation of,
We have a committee of the whole meeting on the 11th.
Okay, all right. So then we can't.
There's
a council meeting. Okay. So we can discuss the mayor's revised budget or his recommendations then?
Yes, we'll be spending all of May together on this screen.
Oh boy, joy.
We can make sure we also send a copy of that ahead of time so that the council team can kind of review it for a few days before we have to discuss it at that COW on the 11th.
Oh, that's absolutely critical. So I appreciate you doing that. If you can send it before the weekend so I can have some just interesting and thrilling weekend material to read,
Sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Sure thing.
While you're staying
You
home
bet.
and staying safe.
While I'm staying home, social distancing.
The city attorney had his hand up, or there was a fly in his office. I'm not sure what.
No flies yet. On the income tax issue, we did start today for the first time in Judge Ward's court prosecution of misdemeanors through 5 Zoom rooms. And also we continue to prosecute the income tax cases all along. So it's not like it's completely shut down. I just want to let you know it is. And pretty soon the whole court will be doing the Zoom prosecutions.
Great, thank you for that information. Are we ready to move on to expenditures? Any more questions on revenues besides the general questions on income tax that Councilmember Wood has for the treasurer when we move on?
I do have one question for the city attorney. Based on the fact of prosecutions, especially when we have a number of people that are unemployed at this time, how are we handling that when they might not have the money to pay those? Are we looking at whether they are currently employed, whether they're receiving any paychecks, or whether they're on unemployment? How's that being dealt with?
It's being dealt with, it always has been dealt with folks come in as defendants and can't pay. There's usually a deferred sentence or cases adjourned. Those are really case-by-case analysis by each particular judge in each case. But we do have that as a process.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not being told right now that, again, we just started the prosecution today in Judge Ward's courtroom. I'll survey all the attorneys and how the income tax is going, but that's generally how it's handled, is deferred sentences or installment payments, things of that nature.
And that's exactly, just to pipe in to help you out, Jim. This is
There you are.
Hi, everyone. That's exactly what is occurring. I actually watched the Zoom hearings this afternoon. Judge Ward was very diligent in asking, how can you, how much time do you need to take care of this? Some things were set out for 2 weeks. Gentleman said, give me 30 days. A young lady said, can I have it July 6th? And we're working with everyone. So we're doing payment plans, and we're extending, as much courtesy as we can to our customers to make good on their obligations.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jake, please continue on with the expenditure side of things.
All right. So here we have the general fund expenditures, starting with the City Council, a budget that is near and dear to your hearts. A few items I'd like to begin with. Many of these expenditure lines are pretty self-explanatory: salaries, overtime, miscellaneous operating, I suppose. But some might be a little bit confusing, particularly for the public seeing this for the first time. If you're looking all the way over to the left with the account numbers, you'll notice that each of these different sections, they have their own little cost center. So the first 3 digits, that's the fund. The second set of digits, that's the little section or division. And then the third set refers to the object description where it says salaries, overtime. And for now, you can ignore the final set of digits. And so several areas that might confuse folks. So we distinguish between fringe benefits fixed and fringe benefits variable. Variable benefits refer to those benefits that come out of the payroll process. And so that's your health care, life insurance, dental. The fixed benefits refer to, in large part, the retirement costs that are spread out across the city and allocated according to the employee base. Another area that you might notice, utility fees are charged across all of the city departments, depending on the building that they're in. Telephone charges refer to the phones that a department uses, whether it's handheld devices or desk phones. And insurance and bonds are the insurance and legal costs that the city incurs that are spread out to all departments. Another particular expenditure we get a lot of questions about is the information technology allocation. This is not necessarily in the control of individual departments, but refers to the overhead costs of our IT department, which are spread out across departments in 3 parts, being the department-specific costs, an allocation based on personnel, and an allocation based on the number of computers and technology. Going over into your budget specifically, $715,000 goes to the City Council. There are only minor adjustments. The internal audit is staying roughly the same. There had been discussion of contracting this function out for independent analysis and possible savings. However, there's only been minor adjustments, particularly salary scale resetting as we look for a replacement. The circuit court here for $277,000 refers to the building rental. Going into neighborhoods and citizens engagement, which also wraps around and includes the Office of Financial Empowerment. This is a $1.1 million budget. This budget currently restructures the Lansing SAVE program. There was 1 FTE involved, which is eliminated and now set up so that this program can scale independently within this than it could within the city. This provides savings accounts for community members as they grow up and go through the school system so that they may go into college. This department also leverages a lot of external grant funds, including $560,000 for offender success, $120,000 for the What Works Cities government program, and $1.2 million in technical assistance for city operational efficiency and transparency initiatives. So hopefully we're getting a good bang out of the buck there. Skipping on to the mayor's office.
And council members, just real quick, I've got 2 folks that have alerted me they have questions. I'm going to hold to the end of the expenditures to open it up to questions, just so you're aware. Continue, Jake, sorry.
Nope. Skipping on to the mayor's office. So previously we had the CSO position transferred into the Finance Department. Other than that, there are no major changes projected for fiscal year 2021. The Office of Community Media, the kind folks currently setting up the city TV and keeping that running, also operating the public education grants. Their budget is $550,000. Skipping forward into the city clerk, that budget is 1.5 million. There are no major operational changes at this time. We have had some discussions about their budget, particularly as it comes out to the possibility for remote voting and some technological improvements that might need to be made. So that may come as a revision in the subsequent budget as we present new options to you. Looking at economic development and planning, overall, this is 5.5 million as far as the general fund goes, and it's one of our larger departments. The admin includes, the admin includes 462,000, which is dedicated towards the Economic Development Corporation for economic development and also facade improvements. And also, we've restored the 1.2 million for the LUTPA subsidy at this time. Going down into code compliance, that budget comes out to about 2.7 million. And then their planning section is 550,000. Near and dear to my own heart is the finance operations budget. As we've discussed in the previous meeting, this includes the restoration of the finance director position, as well as the purchasing position from contracted services into salaries as we bring that position back into the city. Right now, we are holding contractual services roughly the same, as there will be a certain training period as we get the new purchaser up to speed. Moving on to assessing, we have no major structural changes to this department. The total budget is 1.7 million. And with Treasury income tax, we also have no major changes, sitting at 2.3 million. Going over into our human resources department, there are also no major changes. It also includes some educational reimbursement items as required by collective bargaining agreements. The total here comes out to 2.3 million. Attorney's office also projects no major changes. Their budget comes out to 2.3 million. Building maintenance, we're getting into public service territory. That section comes out to 4.3 million. Jumping into our police department. For admin, we have no major operational changes with personnel and all of that entails for admin. That's 7.2 million. Technical services and training are at 1.1 million. Central services, 1.8 million. Radio lab, providing all of the equipment, the radios, technology. That budget comes out to 460,000. Detention, 3.7 million. No major operational changes. You'll notice several items for allowances, gun, clothing, physical agility test. These are collective bargaining agreements related. Property and supplies, we have 320,000. Investigations, 10 million. Patrol Bureau, this is the one where we discussed reviewing the overtime spending for. And so we've reduced overtime and out of that savings, we are able to add 3 patrol officers. This should have a net zero impact on our budget, but provide us better public safety operations. Overall, for police, that total budget comes out to $47.4 million. Moving into fire, admin comes out to $5.5 million. Maintenance alarm, we have $1.36 million. Suppression, putting out fires, $27.6 million. Special operations, hazardous materials, $30,000. Prevention, $1.14 million. Training, $830,000. Fire radio lab, $18,000. Ambulance services, $226,000. And emergency services at $615,000. Total fire budget comes out to $37.4 million. Going back to public service, admin and engineering, we have $5.3 million. Operations and maintenance, getting towards $620,000. Sidewalks, snow and ice, city property, $160,000. Flood control, $21,000. Storm sewer maintenance, $1.1 million. Alley maintenance, $44,000. Landfill and trash pickup, $118,000. Property maintenance, $38,000. Transportation, dues and subscriptions, $98,000. Then we have our human relations, community services. Currently had some transition costs in this current year. We're back to normal operations with $1.7 million. Going into parks, business and management division, $1.4 million. Parks but managed by public service, forestry, $1.4 million. Grounds and landscape maintenance, $2.6 million. Leisure and special recreation, $8.6 million. Community centers, $1.3 million. Lifetime sports, an area that might see some changes as we look at our budget and review it, $360,000. Special recreation, $196,000. Turner Dodge House, $45,000. We have our Fenner Nature Center at $20,000. Kids camps at $32,000. Our human agencies budget comes from city ordinance, where there's 1.25% of the general fund revenue set aside to provide basic human services. That number comes out to $1.8 million. We're able to provide you a distribution of that amount if you're interested. Then we have our city supported agencies included with our debt service. Combined, that is $1.6 million. Then we have our transfers for capital, supporting other funds, district court expenditures, $6.26 million. Our overall general fund budget, $144,100,000. This was developed following the budget policies, which ask that we contribute $500,000 towards the fund balance, given the current levels. We've reviewed city ordinance and city charter and determined that if you wish to change this ordinance, that is up to your own discretion and your budget policies. we will follow administration's will in developing a budget and presenting recommendations based on our updated estimates. Is there any questions on general fund?
We do have a few questions. I have one. We've had a plague and murder hornets on the way. You didn't anticipate an increase in flood protection needed for the next year?
No.
That's a joke there. Sorry.
Yeah.
It falls flat on the video conference. Council member Spitzley, then Wood.
Oh, you're on mute.
Patricia, you are muted. Hold on a second. There you go.
Am I on? Off
You are
mute?
unmuted now. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. I can't find my face, so I can't unmute myself. But I just had a it was way back in the beginning, but I just had a couple questions about some of the budgets. For me, it would be helpful if I just had a little bit more, for example, on some of the fund balances, on the first one I was looking at was the neighborhood and citizen engagement, where the budget, and we may have talked about it last year, but the budget went from 136 to now 214, just for salaries. It would be helpful for me to figure out, what does that mean? And is that one position, two positions? I don't recall, and I'm sure we got a press release on it, but I don't remember. And so it would be helpful if we had a little bit more information on that. And then on the internal auditor, I know that we had kicked around discussion of contracting that out or doing something else other than hiring an internal auditor for city council, but I don't know where that is. And
I'll turn it over to Council Member Hussein for that. We'll answer that one first, because that one we can answer.
Okay.
The committee did some work on that, and Vice President Hussein, if you could address that, that'd be great.
So very simply, an RFP was put together and an RFP was issued. However, it was, as you can imagine, very difficult for us to get individuals to respond. Per ordinance, things had to be. Our understanding was submitted hard copy and things of that nature, and deadlines were extended, things of that nature. But we ended up having an internal conversation that we just did not believe we were going to be able to get a service provider in place to get us through the budget process, because that really was the conversation. We wanted to get a service provider in place to help us navigate essentially the budget process. And due to COVID-19 and obviously the complexity of it all, we weren't able to do that. And Council President Spatafor, if you want to add to that, feel free.
Yeah, I'll add just a little bit too. I think Vice President Hussein, you were correct. We did that conversation, but I'll have an issue with one word. It wasn't an internal. It was actually a posted committee meeting, and we made that decision as a group. And I just wanted to clarify that it was the committee made that decision, made it and the recommendation to council, which really wasn't needed a recommendation to council because we didn't need to do that, but we wanted to make sure that we did it as a group to pull that back. And Vice President Hussein's absolutely correct. We couldn't meet the timelines that were necessary. Otherwise, it would just been a waste of expenditure.
So we're still planning on doing something. That's why the dollar amounts are there kind of as a placeholder.
Yes, it's a charter position that needs to be filled. We're on a hiring freeze right now, which I'm sure we would all agree is a good move, but we just trying to do interviews and make that work is just not feasible right now. And I think that it was a unanimous decision by that committee to move forward without the contracted service. Yeah. But we will still need the position next year in the budget, so we'll need to keep it there. And then Mayor Shore, I think you wanted to address the first question about the neighborhood citizen engagement position.
Mayor, before you do that, I don't want to single out the neighborhood and citizen engagement department, because
and I might have the answer if he doesn't.
Yeah, that wouldn't be fair. What I'm saying is that as we've gone through the budget, there's been a couple departments where there have been, looks like some large increases in salaries, and it would have, for me, it would just been helpful if it would have been like, under code compliance, it's increased, looks like $70,000, that is for an extra code compliance. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
I'm
and I'll
not-
say too, some of those increases were adopted in last year's budget, like the neighborhood citizen engagement one was part of the mayor's original budget. I think we removed it and then it was put back through a veto, if memory serves. And then there were a few others in code compliance, the additional code officers that we added last year through the process. But if the mayor wants to address any of those, go for it, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's the answer. The answer is, and again, I don't know what Jake and Shelby know because they weren't here for the last budget, but that's the answer. We added a neighborhood coordinator last year, and we added, I believe, and Brian may remember. So in the neighborhood department, it's 3 positions total. So this was an addition last year. In code compliance, I think we added a planner last year, and we may have added. Trying to remember when we added the corridor enforcement person. Again, Ryan, maybe on the Zoom, maybe able to weigh in. But these were increases based on positions that were added last year.
Because the only added positions in this budget, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'm wrong, or Jake or Shelby, is the bringing back of a finance director full-time position and the 3 new police officers, but those are accomplished through the overtime. Is there any other positions that I've missed?
The purchasing position.
The purchasing position, I'm sorry, yep.
Jake, I'll let you take it from there.
That be it?
That's
All
it,
right,
okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wood, then Betts.
Thank you, President Spatafor. My first general question would be, are there any changes in operations that would be stopped or current services that would be changed within the departments that you've not indicated to us at this point?
Nothing that's been incorporated into the budget proposal. There's no
Okay.
operational changes there.
All right. My next question has to do with IT. And when the IT fund was started, this has to do with the replacements of computers and different things like that. One of the things that I see that doesn't make a lot of sense, I realize that there are some because of the reduction in staff and some with the increase in staff that you will see fluctuations in the IT budget. But as an example, looking at the neighborhood and citizen engagement, last year their IT costs were $7,211, and this year they're $42,302. Another example is the media. When I was looking at it, theirs last year was $14,421 and it went to $52,000. Finance was another one that was up. Can you explain what these huge increases are within IT? We were explained last year that if there were additional software packages or things that were being bought per department, those were coming out of the departmental budgets. They were not part of the IT budget.
Yeah, and so that explanation still holds a lot of water for this budget. As I described at the beginning, the IT allocation is split into 3 parts. So there's a department-specific softwares which are billed directly to their individual departments, and that might have been a change from previous years or new softwares introduced that affect some individual departments. Neighborhoods and citizens engagement is one that I'm specifically looking into. I think there might have been some adjustments that were made in splitting off the Office of Financial Empowerment from them. And so I'm reviewing to make sure that's all up to speed. But a lot of it is just the per person and per computer charge, with the biggest source of variation being any new additional softwares that whether they found out that it was only belonging to a single department and allocating it out respectively.
Well, I'd like to see some type of explanation. With these line items, if you could explain the ones that have larger increases, is this new software that we're purchasing for them? And what is that software expected to do? Now I'm looking at Treasury as an example. There's last year, the budget that was adopted was 22, let's see, am I looking at this right? was 81,000, and this year it's 104,000. So if we could get some type of explanation on this. We have repeatedly heard about how software doesn't, the purchase of software at times is not speaking with other softwares throughout the city operations. And so that's a concern for me as we look at that. So I'd like to see that. You also talked about the HRCS budget. I would like to see the line items dealing with the 1.25. We are normally given those. So I'd like to see those as well. Last week, in a question that I had for the Lansing Housing Commission, was they were asking that the admin dollars that the city was getting, the HRCS department was getting, that they be reimbursed those admins since we weren't doing any of that work. Is that a consideration that the administration is looking at? And based on that, how are they readjusting their budget with that?
Before we move to that, Councilmember Wood, I think Christopher Mumby had his hand up related to the IT question. Christopher, if you would like to respond, please turn your camera on. If not, I'll move on. And unmute yourself. There we go.
Yep, I think I got it.
There you go.
Yeah, just really quickly, one of the things we noticed, and nice to see everyone tonight, by the way. One of the things we noticed when I took the new chair was that the formula for allocating IT costs hadn't been updated in a couple years. So what we did was kind of go back to the beginning and figure out how it was intended to work. And really briefly, we split the IT costs in 3 ways, as Jake kind of explained. We take software charges that are specific to a single department, and those are still in the IT budget. So they're in the IT allocation line, but they are charged just to that department. So that's a portion of each department's IT allocation. The remainder of the IT budget is split in half. And that's half of the budget is split based on the number of personnel that are using technology in a department. It doesn't necessarily equate to the number of budgeted positions, because contract employees or seasonal workers or temp agency employees, anyone that uses an IT computer for the majority of the year counts as a person we support. And then the other half is based on the number of computers, which is not necessarily the same, but roughly they're the same dollar amount. And it's roughly $3,500 per person and $3,500 roughly per computer. And that is how it is split out. Some departments had roughly the same charges. I think neighborhood and citizen engagement was only charged as if they had one single computer and one single person in that department. But we actually support, I want to say 5 or 6 people. They're not full-time permanent salary employees, but that is how many folks we support in that particular department. So that's how the budget is broken down, and budget director has the breakdown of all the individual software as well and how that's charged. But that in a nutshell is how the IT budget is allocated. And it's actually very transparent down to the number of people, the number of computers, and the specific software charged to each department. And that is a change from the last few budgets. I think maybe 3 years ago, this formula was put together and followed, and then it was kind of just copied the last couple of years. It wasn't updated for staffing or number of computers. And so we put forth the effort this year to be able to justify exactly what those charges were for each department. And so that's a little sticker shock in some areas, including the police department and the fire department. We built in a 4-year replacement plan for every computer that we support, including those in the police cars, which are all being replaced this year, and the fire department rigs, which we're also replacing. And that had never been built into the replacement cycle before. There are other examples like that, but I've talked long enough unless you have more questions.
Thank you, Christopher, very much. Appreciate the explanation. I had Councilmember Wood's hand was still up at the time, and I see Councilmember Betts had his hand up, but put it down, and then Councilmember Spitzley is waving her hand at me. Just wanted to make sure we start with Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. I remember when this IT formula was put together in the department, and we were told at the time that replacements, that's why we were being charged what we were being charged, was because it was supposed to help pay for the replacement. So I'm finding it difficult now to find out that, you know, that's not what was happening and that's not what we were doing. So that's, you know, that's somewhat disconcerting. My other question would be, when we're talking about part-time employees, does that mean that every department where there are part-time employees are assigned their own personal computer, or is it one that they're working off of that could be signed in? If somebody worked in the morning and somebody worked in the afternoon, that they could sign in on the same computer? Are we double charging on those? So those are some additional questions that if we could get some explanations to. And I don't necessarily, again, need them right this minute if you could get back to us. I do have a couple of other questions, Mr. President. My next question has to do with the funding that we have for, that we give for the Lansing Center and the stadium. Based on the fact that their revenues are going to be drastically reduced, have we heard anything from the authority that they're going to be requesting additional funds?
Jake or Shelby?
Actually, I think Scott's here with us tonight. I attended their last meeting that they had with their board, along with the finance committee, to make sure that they were cash flow wise staying afloat. As far as next year goes, I'm sure just like us, we're still trying to figure out the true impacts to revenue and what it will look like. Them especially, you know, how soon will people feel comfortable returning to, you know, whether it's the stadium or the conference center. I don't want to put Scott on the spot here, but I think I saw him join earlier. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Scott.
Is Scott there?
Yes,
Scott,
yes,
Scott, when you answer the question, I'd also like to know how many bookings, if you have an idea, how many bookings have been canceled that would have been going on that they've decided already to cancel for the next fiscal year.
So Shelby did a great job of explaining it. We've been canceled and or postponed 60 since March 12th. However, about 66% of those are rebooked already in this fiscal year or next fiscal year. So we are seeing them return. The only question we're going to have is, you know, the limitations that may be put forward. So whether it's a restriction on numbers and or budgets as these meetings come back, but everybody is talking about rebooking, rescheduling all the way through this process.
My next question has to do with the police chief. I know that we have talked about the fact that we've reduced the overtime budget to be able to pay for additional police officers, feeling that that will compensate that. Chief Green, my question to you would be, how much of the overtime, our current overtime budget, has to do with staffing, not being able to fill positions because of staffing, versus crime or public safety issues that have come forward that we've had to utilize officers longer?
Chief Green there he is, he's coming on.
Here, can't get my video to come on, but I'll say this, the bulk of our patrol staffing, which is 3,400 hours, and my video is coming on now, that's 3,400 hours of overtime. That's the bulk of our overtime issues. We normally budget a little high for our special operations investigations and our command staffing overtime as well, particularly for the patrol division. So the question you asked me is really complicated to answer because depending on the crime in the city or whatever, that could affect that as well. What we tried to do is, you know, with the additional 3 officers, that's a savings for us in overtime. The second thing we did was we went to the school district to seek funding for our 3 school resource officers, and we were turned away on that, unfortunately. So those officers will be reintroduced to the patrol staff. And then the last thing that I'm trying to do to help mitigate the overtime is in discussion with both unions to try to push them to go to 12-hour shifts. If we can do that, if we can go over to the 12-hour shifts, that would increase our staffing levels as well for those emergencies that happen that are unpredictable at some time. So we're looking to do that, those 3 things to further mitigate overtime. But again, the last thing about overtime is our detention. Our detention has historically had quite a few vacancies. The HR director has done a great job. Our staffing levels are almost at 100%. We have 1 female to hire that we're working through right now. But again, that's challenging. If a person quits, we're right at the cusp of requesting overtime for that particular position being open. And it normally takes about 3.5 to 4.5 months to change a person to be on their own and fill that vacancy. So a couple things have to come into play. Again, the 12-hour shifts, if I can sell that to the supervisories and also the non-sup unions, I think that will help us mitigate the overtime.
Chief Green, you alluded to a couple things that I would like some additional information on. One, with the additional 3 officers that this budget would, the future budget would pay for, how long would it take from the time the budget would pass to actually having officers there and working?
Well, it depends on which course that they come in. If they come in out of the academy, you're looking at approximately 5 to 6 months. If we have to put them through the academy, then add another 4 months to that. So if we're hiring people that are sworn from another department, you're looking at right around 4 months training time. Okay. So, you know, that's why we had to grab those 3 officers from the schools to put them in play immediately.
So that was my next question. By the fact that we're removing the 3 officers, these are the ones that I'm assuming are at Sexton, Everett, and Eastern, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so we would not have officers in the school at those locations next fall, is that correct?
That's correct. Officers would not be in there full time, but obviously we'll change our operations to reflect that. So officers still will be making frequent visits throughout the school and developing those relationships with the administration and students as well. We would rely on our not only our patrol officers, but our community police officers to fill that gap.
Okay, I have one other question that has to do with the fire department and with Chief Mackey. Chief Mackey, are you front loading firefighters at this time? And if so, how many are you front loading?
No, we're not going to front load. We had some conversations at one time. We're going to hire 16, which by the time that hiring class was going to take place, it would account for a few people who are going to retire. Since then, we're looking at scaling that number down to roughly hiring 10. With our fire department, our number for our cutover, as far as overtime, it's cheaper for us to actually have 6 vacancies and pay the overtime than it is to hire 6 people. So we need 16, so we're going to probably end up hiring 10.
And for Shelby and Jake, the information that the chief just gave us on the 3 officers that are coming out of the school is exactly what I asked in the very beginning. I asked you if there were any changes to operational budgets, that something that we were stopping, or current services, or how they were being changed. This is a current service. We had 3 officers in the schools. We are now looking at taking them out. So when I asked that question, if there are other departments out there that are making changes, I would appreciate getting that information, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
My questions.
That's if I can jump in, this is an issue that we are in discussions with the school district right now. There is no actual decision on operational changes, and it's not a budgetary decision. This is a decision where we have asked the school district to go in with us instead of us providing 100% of the funds. There is no school going on right now, and there won't be throughout the summer, so we have until September. So at this point, we're returning those officers to the street, and we're hoping to have some conversations with the school district moving forward into September. So this was not a budgetary decision. This was a decision of the officers are not actually in the schools. We would like to see some changes with that contract with the school district, because we'd like to see them contributing. And we've had conversations with the superintendent, but I don't think this is a Jake and Shelby decision. This was something that we are in the middle of having conversations with the district, and we're returning those officers to the street. They could be back in the schools if the school district agrees to work with us on this. And again, maybe they won't because they have their own budgetary issues. And so this is not an issue that came up really as part of budget discussions. This was an issue that came up as part of how we work through our police force. So I think this is a little bit off.
May I respond to that, Mr. President?
Sure, and then we're moving on to Councilmember Spitzley.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Mayor, but this is exactly why I think it is important. Last year, when we were going through the budget, there was a change with the blue bag. It didn't mean that we weren't picking up trash anymore, but there was a service that was being discontinued, and there was a change to it. Yes, this apparently had been discussed in the Public Service Committee, but not all council members were aware of that. And at the time, after the budget was passed, some of these issues came up, and many of us had to say we didn't know what was going on. This might not have a budgetary implication to us at this point, but I think it is relevant for us as we're looking at the budget to have this information. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on now. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for Chris.
Who's Chris? Christopher?
Is Chris?
Christopher Mumby.
Okay, Christopher Mumby.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, I didn't know if it was Chris Ope or Christopher Mumby. Christopher Mumby, are you still on?
I am.
Yes, he is. There we go.
All right, great. So during the IT presentation, and I was looking at that too, and noticing that a number of different departments had quite a large increase in IT. And so, and remembering the presentations years past when they talked about how the IT budget was determined, you mentioned that you have put together a new formula to determine the IT charges per department. Have the departments and or council been provided that formula? Or because I don't remember that coming through council, that there was a new formula out, and that's how our IT bill was now, our IT charges were now going to be provided. So was that formula shared?
He shared it about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think he shared that there is a formula. I get that. But what I'm saying is, that's nice that he shared it 10 minutes ago, but I would think that a department that's getting ready to look at their budget, if they've budgeted something and now they're going to have an increase in IT, what I'm asking was that shared with departments before today?
Absolutely. And I reviewed it with Jake and Shelby also. And the departments that got the big increases, I had, Chief Green, I probably had 2 or 3 meetings just with Chief Green to go over how it was projected to be and to find out if there were changes. And in fact, we found a few cases where we had software budgeted that he didn't want or need anymore. And we were able to make some changes before the budget was turned in to make that. We probably took $150,000 off his allocation, and it's still huge. The police department IT allocation is the largest by far. Public service we talked to, fire department we talked to in actual sit-down meetings. And then when I presented it to Jake, he and I went through the formula to make sure that he understood how it was working. And every department received their budget and was told to please reach out to me if they had specific questions about how it impacted them. But those 3 departments really have such a large number of people and computers that I won't say it's a new formula, but it was actually updated and followed how it was intended to be. I think that was kind of when Colin put this together, it made sense. They just didn't go through it's pretty painful to go through, count the number of computers and double check the number of people and then actually figure out who uses what software each year. And so I think while it was introduced, it was probably pretty reliable in year 1 and then a little less reliable in year 2. And by years 3 and 4, they just used the same percentages and rolled it through without updating it. So I wouldn't say it's a new formula, and I wouldn't have thought to present that kind of a formula to City Council, but certainly I reviewed it with the Finance Department and with the departments that were hit with a big change, plus or minus. Some departments had a rather nice reduction, and our overall budget wasn't a huge increase, but it was certainly allocated based upon people and computers this year, and not necessarily so the last couple.
Well, and I also think we should just take some credit for that, Councilmember Spitzley, because we had Eric look at this last year for the council budget and readjusted our allocations because it hadn't been changed on the reality. So I think we can take a little credit in moving at least the recognition forward on that.
Thank you. And so the last question I have is, because I didn't understand it. And so, and it was a while ago that you said it. So, bear with me on this question, but did you say that you charge per person and per computer? So if you're charging, so my example, so you're charging Patricia, but you're also charging per Patricia's computer. So it just help me with that. Is that you're charging double, or how's that working?
Let's say my budget is $5 million. It is not, but let's say it's $5 million. I take $2.5 million and I divide that by the number of people we support in IT.
Okay.
So some departments, police, fire, public service have the largest number of people, but not every person has a computer. The other $2.5 million is split based on the number of computers. And that seemed the most fair way to split the charges based upon how we support the departments. So it's not a double charge. It's half of our budget is allocated based on the number of pieces of technology, and the other half is based on the people we support. But it's not a double charge. And they're almost the same dollar amount because it's half of the budget, but each department, it isn't 50-50. The number of, they don't have 50 people and 50 computers. They're not quite the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Spitzley. Christopher, other questions from council members? Okay, Jake, Shelby, is there more to the presentation this evening?
Let's see, did we get through all the general fund expenditures?
We did, at least for the proposed budget, yes.
Yes, excellent.
So I had a couple questions, and I think you've answered them throughout, but let me just, if you could please make sure you send the Hrc S contract recommendations to the council, please, along with your revised budget. Carol, I think you asked my question about the fees associated with summer programming and how much we were planning on still doing with the Parks Department. So we'll look into that in your revised budget, hopefully, but if not, for sure soon. And then I had a couple questions about some of the positions, i.e. like the finance director. Are these the types of positions that could maybe be held off on hiring until we know? Sort of, and I'm singling out the finance director, and I don't mean to, but is that the type of thing that can be held off a little bit so we don't do it right on July 1, but keep it in the budget so it's there if the revenues are there, or is it something that's not doable?
Yeah, I mean, the world is our oyster.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
That's an administrative choice.
Gotcha. Yeah, of course. Okay. Other questions, council members, before we move on to the next action item? Councilmember Wood. Yep, we got a few. Okay, Councilmember Betts, then Hussein, then Wood.
Thank you, President Spatafore. One question that I have for finance: do you have any expectation on how HRCS is going to be affected by the COVID pandemic? Do we expect increased service costs or anything like that?
Yeah, so any projected loss in general fund revenue, you would associate a 1.25% of that loss to be affecting the human services line. And so if you take, say, 9 million, multiply that times 0.0125, that's 112,000.
Does this budget reflect increases in need for HRCS services due to COVID-19? And what maybe, I don't know if you can answer this right now, if we can talk offline with department directors and whatnot.
Yeah, so.
No, this one does not. Obviously, both revenue and expenditures haven't been impacted by COVID. The one that you'll see on Monday should have more detailed information about the true impacts, or at least what's gone out so far.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the sustainability officer, what that looks like going forward. I do know that it's going to be housed in public services. I guess my question is it anticipated that into the future, any new positions will need to be created to support that position? And I think my second question is, will the individual that is, kind of moving over to take over this position, will they continue on with their current duties as well as any new duties resulting from this position? Or is it possible that in the future we might have to hire somebody to fill the vacated role?
You're sure?
Mayor Shore?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. That honestly, I would punt that question to Kilpatrick. He's on. I mean, we're repurposing someone who does this work, and in essence, letting her do this work more. And Andy's got kind of the schematics of how that's all going to work. So if Andy's on and wants to address that, that's probably the best way to do it.
Mr. Kilpatrick?
Yep, thank you. So obviously with a new position like this, it's evolving, but the intention is that we're not adding a position, we're moving someone, shifting her existing duties within CART that she's currently doing with recycling and trash. There might be new duties in the future that are added as this program potentially grows larger, but at the moment, at least for fiscal year 21, we are not anticipating any additional position because of this shift.
Yeah.
And okay, but that's, sorry, go ahead.
And we're proud to say that this was a personnel choice that was developed directly through conversations within the community. Through the fall, we had 4 neighborhood summits, I believe it was 4 of them, where we talked directly with the community. We presented on our budget, we answered their questions, and one of the areas that we've heard a lot of concern about was the environment and having a sustainability manager to focus on this issue directly. And so we're pretty happy to have that in the budget.
Well, and I certainly understand the merit of the position. My question is, could we expect over the next 2-3 budget cycles, as we have seen with other positions that have been created, could we expect to see more and more and more capacity underneath essentially to support, because obviously that comes at a cost too. But what I'm hearing is fiscal year 21, no. However, are we anticipating a bump in pay for this individual?
So as far as the person that's currently in the position, with the changed duties, we're looking at what the classification should be. So it is possible, once the consultant that HR uses to look at positions comes back, that the salary could increase by 1 or 2 steps. I don't know what that would be, but as far as benefits and everything, those would not increase.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all set, Councilmember Hussein? Councilmember Wood.
Yes, yes.
A couple of questions before we move on. I had asked about having some discussion with the treasurer on income tax. Is this the appropriate time to do that?
This is the appropriate time, yes.
All right, if we could have the treasurer on so we could talk about that, I would appreciate it.
Ms. Kaler, are you still with us?
I am.
Very good.
Okay.
Welcome back. Jake, would you mind ending the share screen, please?
Thank you. My first question for the treasurer is, as part of the anticipation of reduction in revenues, how have you figured for a percentage of gearing up? We all realize that come July 1st, June 1st, whatever happens, that the city is just not going to start up all over again. And based on some of the projections that we're hearing from the national level, and that we're looking at the fact that there's a phased in approach to reopening businesses. And I use a restaurant as an example, where we had been receiving revenue and income tax revenue and property tax revenue based on the fact that someone has 20 employees that is servicing 50 people a day, where that might have to be reduced down to 30 people a day, and they bring in less staff because of that. So have you looked at that, and how have you looked at phasing that in?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I currently have a split schedule, so my employees are able to work from home. Uh-oh, are you able to hear me? Because I just received a signal.
We can hear you, yes.
We can hear you, we just don't see you, but that's okay. Now we see you. Okay.
Great. Thank you for asking. So we currently have a split schedule where some employees are able to work from home and some come in, and that's based on, let me tell you what we're doing, because that'll probably make it easier. So what we're doing to maintain operations is we are continuing to issue income tax refunds. We're answering emails and phone calls. We're processing withholding, auditing and processing income tax returns. We're answering property tax questions. And we're also continuing to make departmental deposits because of the internal controls. We want to make sure that the funds are still being protected and also deposited. We are continuing to work with other organizations for, vetting, making sure that people are paying their income tax before they're appointed to boards or before we award bids. And so getting back to what I said initially, we were able to have it so that employees can work in a secure environment at home where they're still continuing to process refunds and returns. And then the people that are in are the folks that have to interact more with, like, the Parks Department when they have deposits to be made. So we're keeping the group small, but everyone is still working. And so the plan for coming back, I'm not going to have more than half of my employees in at a time. We have a protocol for cleansing areas, wearing gloves, wearing the mask. So we have some pretty effective measures in place, but I do not plan on bringing everyone back. I'm going to phase people in and have a splintered skeleton crew that can actually execute all of our functions effectively.
Judy, what I was more looking at is a revenue based. So let's say from July to September, you have the phased in of businesses. So when you're looking at projections, are you looking at a phased in as far as the revenues ratcheting up to what it used to be, or how are you looking at that when you're looking at the revenues right now?
That's actually a perfect way to describe it. I am looking at ratcheting it up. We put a process in place. I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. So we've been doing strategic planning, SWOT analysis, staff meetings, looking at the tax season and the inflows and that's, of money, withholding still coming in. So there are some of these particular tax pieces that are coming in regardless of whether people are staying at home, working from home. So you're right, that it's still going to build up, because last year the brunt of our money came in for income tax in April, because that's when the due date was. But since the legislature has moved it to July 31st, we will probably more than likely get the bulk of it in July. And then of course you are able to capture and accrue up through, I believe it's August 15th. So we're actually looking at revenue collection through August 15th to be credited to this fiscal year.
Okay.
Ms. Kaler, I think what Councilmember Wood is asking is, so for fiscal year 21, we're looking at a spreadsheet from Shelby and Jake that indicated what a 100% loss of revenue for 2 months and 3 months might look like. Have you updated projections for the fiscal year 21 that reflect the reality that some of our taxpayers are not paying taxes for these 2 months for fiscal year 21, not 20, because the ones that you're talking about are 20 collections?
Correct. I have not seen that spreadsheet, so I can't speak to that.
Have you updated the projections for the income tax to reflect that there will not be some economic activity that we'll see in fiscal year 21?
I'm looking at that because there are many components, but it's not just the taxes coming in, it's also withholding and corporate. So we're looking at all of the different pieces.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
So will you have something available for us at the next council meeting to be able to look at with, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
My other question has to do with Mr. Kilpatrick and the Montgomery drain. Because if it's my understanding, part of the budget that we'll be passing has to do with how we are going to collect revenues to pay for the Montgomery drain. Is that, and if that is correct, then could he make a presentation? And maybe that's something that you have at another meeting, President Spatafor, as to how the Montgomery drain, because I don't believe that there's been a lot of talk in the public about that so far.
There hasn't been yet. Mr. Kilpatrick, is there anything you want to say on that right now? I know we have to make that decision eventually. And I'm sorry, I forget where that is in the process.
Yeah, so in the process, the city preserved its right. We did the first 2 steps, I believe, in the public improvement process, so we could move forward with the assessment. At the moment, and Shelby, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe what was submitted here is anticipating an assessment of half of the cost to the property owner, and we would pick up half the cost the way we do for other drain assessments throughout the city. But as far as for a larger presentation, we can put something together and present what that would look like, numbers wise. The difficult thing here, as opposed to as if it's a city project that we normally would just do with sidewalks, we know the cost before we have the hearing. With this, since the project is split into, I believe, 9 or 10 divisions that they're bidding out, and the costs so far have not been coming in any less than what we were anticipating. At least one of them was significantly higher. The final cost on this might have to be increased, which there is a process for that. We would adjust the final costs. Normally, in the city project, if the costs are higher, we do not go back and increase the assessment. In this case, we're talking about large dollar amounts. So if the costs increase over what was anticipated when we have the hearing to set that preliminary roll, we might have to go back again to assess whatever those increased costs are at the end of the project.
But this appears to be part of the budget, so I would hope that that we could get a presentation on it.
Is it part of the budget? There was a Montgomery drain issue mentioned in the Public Service Department.
It's in the budget.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, did you want to address that real quick before we move on to Councilmember Wood?
Director Kilpatrick wasn't in we had a call with the drain commissioner. As everybody on this call probably knows, we don't control that at all. Whatever the drain commissioner costs say they are is what they are, and that's what we're budgeting for. One of the costs did come in higher upon bid, but we had a call with the drain commissioner, and he is convinced that they've actually negotiated that bidder down and thinks that it may come in less than their bid. So we're going to go with the original number that was given to us, which is the 63% of the total cost. It has been incorporated into this budget in terms of the assessments. And I think we presented on that. I thought we presented on it maybe a month and a half ago. I'm sure we can again to provide kind of the information of what's of all of the Montgomery drain. I'm sure you're welcome to have Pat Lindeman come in and discuss what he's doing and the costs. He's been very public about it. The Drainage Board has met twice now. He has had conversations with many members of the public as he's doing the project, but I'm sure he'd be happy to come in and then kind of any questions on what's in this budget can go to Shelby and Jake. But there has been a lot of information about this out. And again, I'm sure Pat is happy to come in, but we get a number from him. There's nothing we can do about it. We just budget and try and pay for it.
And I appreciate that, but I think if you were to ask the residents of the city of Lansing right now, are they aware that there will be an assessment on their taxes if council passes this budget that will deal with the Montgomery drain? I would believe that you would find that 99.9% of them are not. So whether it's been out there, I'm not sure that they understand that this will be added to their, if council approves this, added to their tax bill.
And Councilmember, you remind me that we have to have this conversation that was supposed to be done in committee, and we'll have to bring it to the committee of the whole now. And I know Sherry's on this line, so we'll make sure that it's done before the budget is acted on.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you all for the budget presentation. We're going to move on to the CDBG budget adoption. We've had a public hearing on this. We've had a presentation on this. It's pretty pro forma at this point. So I'm going to ask Vice President Hussein for a motion to adopt the resolution passing the CDBG budget, and then we'll see if there's questions or comments.
So moved, President Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's been moved by Council Vice President Hussein that we adopt the resolution for the CDB budget. Is there discussion on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor will be asked to vote during a roll call vote. And those opposed, the same.
Councilmember Betts?
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar?
Yes.
Councilmember Garza?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley? Did I lose her?
No, she's still here. Hold on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wood?
Yes.
Motion to adopt the resolution for the CDBG budget passes 8-0.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a resolution for the local bridge funding program. It's an application for this. I lost my document here. Hold on. This is just approving the department to submit an application for the local bridge funding program to the state. We did. The deadline for this has been extended, but we do have time today to go ahead and approve it. So there are 5 projects on this: Aurelius Road over Pulowski Creek, East Elm Street over Red Cedar River. Both of those are full replacements. And then there are 6 projects, excuse me. Enterprise Drive over Pulaski Creek is a preventative maintenance. Pennsylvania Avenue over Jackson and Lansing Railroad is preventative maintenance. East Cesar Chavez Avenue over Grand River is preventative maintenance, and Beach Street over Red Cedar River is preventative maintenance. The city would receive state or federal funding to finance 90%, 5% of the construction, and the city would fund 5% of the construction. So we're looking at applying for these grants by the deadline, which is now June 4th. Is there a Councilmember Wood?
Do we have a motion so I can talk on this item?
Mr. Vice President?
Yes, I would move the resolution.
We do have a motion, Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. If Mr. Kilpatrick is still on the call, I'd like to know if he can give us an idea of how many of these we might have an opportunity to get. I know we always list a number of them, but based on prior years' experience, I'm wondering whether he feels, what he feels that we might end up having this year.
Mr. Kilpatrick, there you go.
Yeah, so generally in kind of a given funding year, we will get one-ish. So basically, fortunately, we actually have a member of our department that's on the committee that selects these. So we have a little more intimate knowledge of how they're scoring. So if you, a lot of these go on multiple times before they rise to the top. And we know kind of at a funding cutoff, several years before we get them, we'll see how bridges have scored in the past. And we'll know that over the course of several years, they will rise up as other projects are funded. So I can probably, I don't know if some of these might be new, but any of these that we've submitted in the past, I can tell you how they scored and which ones we think we might get. I can't do that right now, but I can talk to the engineer who's working on this and give you a better idea of exactly how many we think we might get funded and where some of the ones previously that have been submitted scored in the past.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Further questions? So the resolution to approve applying for the funding for the local bridge program for 2023 is before us. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
The resolution to apply for the local bridge program for fiscal year 2023 passes 8-0.
Thank you. The next item is an authorization of a tax anticipated note for cash flow borrowing purposes. We could have a resolution to get it before us. Vice President Hussein. A motion, rather, excuse me.
I'm so sorry. So moved.
It's been moved by Vice President Hussein. So basically, this does not obligate us to a tax anticipated note, but it does authorize the city to begin the process of getting the lowest interest rate and securing that note. And it's designed to ensure cash flow for the city to provide city services as we will have a delay in our income tax and tax collections because of the city and the state pushing that back, the deadline back, as Ms. Kaler explained, as Ms. Fryer explained. So I'm going to have Shelby address anything I missed, the finer points and questions for you all. But basically, this is authorization for the administration to begin pursuing the lowest interest rates and begin the borrowing process. And my question would be, do you have to come back to us to initiate the borrowing, or is it a done deal after this? So Shelby, if you're still with us, there you are. Oh, no, hold on a second. Okay, oh.
Better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thank you. You did a great job summarizing. That's exactly what this is. It's, as I mentioned in the last meeting, we've received now to date about 24.3 million of all of our income tax for this year, even though we budgeted 37. So given that uncertainty of what's coming in the next couple of months, this just provides us a backstop for cash. Doesn't mean we're going to issue it, doesn't mean we're going to do it. All it does is lets us kind of go to market and shop for best rates, as Peter mentioned. So in this resolution, you'll see we have many different options for placing this particular tax anticipation note. It's a mouthful. But if you want specifics, I do have our municipal advisor, Brian Leffler, on the line, and bond counsel, Jared Smith from Dykema, if there are specific questions about structure of the note. But right now, again, this is just a backstop to make sure that we are able to make all of our payables on the dates that they're due.
Questions from council? I do have one, but Councilmember Wood, go for it.
Excuse me. Thank you, President Spatafor. I don't think President Spatafor's question was answered, and that was, is this, once this is passed, is this done, or will it come back to council once it comes time to actually borrow the money? Are we giving a blanket approval at this point?
Yep, and I'll have both Brian Leffler and Jared Smith can speak to the actual process. My understanding right now is that this just gives us the authorization to go and look. If we are able to secure financing to terms that are appropriate, we can do that now that you've given us essentially the authorization to do that. So I'm not sure a blanket approval is the right word, but this would give us the authority to issue the tax anticipation note without coming back again. Certainly, I'm happy to if we end up needing one, number one, and number two, if we end up finding a buyer for this particular note, I am happy to come back and update the council as far as interest rates and where it was placed and in the terms of the loan, if that would be helpful.
I will tell you, I'm not supportive unless it comes back to council for us to understand what it is that we're doing. It's my concern on this. So I don't know whether that's something that can be added into the current resolution or what we're able to get from that. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So I will say I'm comfortable myself moving forward. That answers my question. I just wanted clarity on if there was a next step or not. I'm comfortable authorizing going forward because I believe it is necessary that we cover the payroll, but I understand why some might have some concern. So you answered my question on that. Thank you. So we do have a motion before us. Would the clerk please call the roll? Wait, hold on. Just sorry. Sure. Are there any other questions or discussion? Y'all kind of let me go on that one there. I want to make sure. Okay. Sherry, could you please call the roll?
Mr.
Smirka, yes.
I think you should hear from the investment advisors on the resolution also.
Okay. Brian, Mr. Leffler, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So the resolution, excuse me, the resolution is going to, like the other bond resolutions that were authorized by council before, allows the finance department to go forward with doing sealed bids for the sale of fixed rate bonds, or in this case, a tax anticipation note. So with this, as Shelby Ferry had mentioned, we're giving the city options to finance the working capital needs. And what's more importantly is that I know there's a not to exceed amount in the resolution, but what Baird has been doing, working with the city finance department and the city treasurer, is to monitor your weekly cash flow to make sure that if there is any borrowing amount, that it's the minimum amount that is needed. In addition to that, then it's actually being repaid pursuant to statutory requirements.
Mr. Smirka, you anything else?
If bond counsel is present, I think we need to have him answer the questions that were raised about the resolution.
Yep. Good evening. Jared Smith is here from Dykema Gossett, and thank you for the chance to speak on this. It's been well summarized so far. Tax anticipation note authorized by Act 34. I'll at least point out, as Brian did as well, the parameters. By statute, we would be limited to 2 times coverage of anticipated property tax receipts. We're also structurally required to repay these on a percentage basis based on those receipts compared to the outstanding par amount. We anticipate this to be a drawdown note so that you aren't just borrowing a full amount and then wind up not needing it. So it would be anticipated that you would draw the money necessary to fill in any shortfalls. And then the opportunity is there to privately place these, as was mentioned, or even to sell to the Michigan Finance Authority, who was at least contemplating a pool transaction to help reduce costs. If there were other municipalities, which we anticipate there will be, that find themselves in the same boat and are looking for a cash flow borrowing. So that program has not moved forward yet, but this resolution authorizes those various options with the goal being as efficient as possible.
Okay, I have a few people with questions. Councilmember Spitzley, then Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. So to Mr. Leffler and the bond attorney, because I'm still a little unclear. The approval today allows them to do the investigation to see whether or not they need the funding and to seek the funding. They won't have to come back to council at all. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The idea being, and our recommendation being, obviously we can come back and report to all of you any results, but to have this in place in case there is a need to move quickly once we realize more fully the impacts of the pandemic and the delayed timing of receipts, or even failure to have those receipts as the year moves forward.
Thank you. I'm trying to, is there a process that finance has? I hope I'm asking this correctly. I'm trying to ask that you will determine, I mean, when will you know for sure whether or not, or that you'll have to go for these funds? I mean, is there a timeline that you have in mind?
This is Brian Leffler. The timeline is right now that it's anticipated probably a little bit after July. Is projected that possibly you may have your lowest cash flow in terms of enough revenue to pay your expenses. As I think you're aware, and even the city treasurer has mentioned, with your income tax filing deadline at the end of July, there may be expenses that you may have prior to the end of July. And that's what we're going to continue to monitor. So the process is that we essentially keep updating a weekly cash flow, working with the finance department and the treasurer to make sure that that happens. As it relates in terms of putting out information to potential bidders, it's essentially, it is a competitive process. So we ask primarily commercial banks, and those banks that essentially have deposits or have received deposits from the city. For example, you may have money with Comerica Bank, you may have money with a Huntington Bank. We'll ask them to bid on your notes, or this DTAN, or excuse me, this tax anticipation note, and then and give all the terms to lending you the money. It's a fairly open process.
Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Smith and Mr. Smirtka. Would there be any problem with adding a clause in here that into the resolution that would require that once a decision has been made, and even if it was after the fact of the borrowing, that there be a report made to council?
Mr. Smith answers part of this too, but so there's no problem with the report being made. My read of the resolution is an authorization to sell the bonds, to sell the tax anticipation notes. The receipt of the proceeds, however, has to come back to council as a supplemental appropriation. So you would have a chance to look at the actual proceeds at that time. It'd be a supplemental. Mr. Smith?
So a little clarification to that. Obviously, yes, it would, any monies received that are intended to replace funding shortfalls would obviously be part of the budget and part of any reporting. However, as this resolution is currently drafted, no subsequent approvals would be required with respect to approving the purchaser or the amount. I anticipate that those reports would be forthcoming regardless of how this turned out, is just a way of keeping city council informed about funding shortfalls. And as far as approving the receipt of the funds, though, that would be part of this resolution. Once there is that need, once the bond deal closes, those funds can be drawn upon to fill in those shortfalls immediately.
Mr. Council President, may I make a mention to address Council Member Wood's concern about the process?
Yes, go
One
ahead.
of the things that you have as a fiduciary duty is to give the results of the sale, and Baird would be normally providing the results of any sale to the finance office, and they can certainly share that with the council. And it does not, the request does not have to be incorporated into the resolution. It's something that we need to do anyways.
Oh, so Councilmember Wood has her hand up, and then Councilmember Spitzley has a hand up.
I'm not sure that this would be an additional appropriation, because if it's already budgeted that there's that much revenue as a shortfall, all you're doing is putting the money into a revenue that's already there. So I'm not sure that it's a, it's always, if it's over an appropriated amount. So I don't see that it would come back to council to reappropriate the money that's already been appropriated.
If it's in this budget, correct. If it is over, it would have to come back as a supplemental.
But just to clarify, we're not talking about a budget shortfall. We're talking about a cash shortfall. So what we're budgeting, you're right, would be part of the approval process. But issuing a tax anticipation note would be considered new revenue, and you would have to approve it in a budget amendment, because it's not something that we're budgeting for. It's something that it's a cash flow. It's a timing issue, not a budget issue, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That answers my question.
And Mr. Mayor, you guys, you're no problem. Would you be willing to, without amending the resolution, because I don't want to do that on the floor here, and we have 2 minutes, but would you be willing to present a report if we do go to market on these and sell them?
Yeah, we'll let you know. We'll let you know. I don't have a problem with that. If it's a matter of reporting, I don't want to slow up, whatever it would take. I don't want employees not to get paid because things get slower. But if the request is a report so the council is made aware, I don't have a problem with that at all.
That's my primary concern, is I don't want to add a couple more steps to getting this approved. If we think it's a good idea tonight, it's a good idea when we go to market, is my personal belief on this. And if it's the difference between making payroll and not, it's important to me that it gets done. But
yeah, I think you've got all of us now saying that on record also. So you do what you want to do with it. It's fine. This is being videoed. It's fine.
I didn't hear an actual amendment, so if there's one that needs to be done on the floor, we'll go that route. But I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Spitzley. Go ahead. Your hand.
So, a couple of questions. What happens if we don't do this today? Can we come back in a month or in July when we might have a better feel for what's going on?
I think a couple of things from a timing perspective. My understanding is it takes about 30 to 45 days to actually issue the tax anticipation note. Only because we have to actually find a buyer, number one, if we choose to go that route. They'll have, I'm sure, terms and conditions that attorneys will need to go back and forth on to make sure we're getting the best rate, payment terms, and all of those fun things will be a part of that agreement. So those things take a couple of weeks to hammer out. So why we kind of brought it so soon was to say we want to have this as a backstop just in case. So I guess my preference would to say if you guys really want to delay it a week, certainly that's your choice. I would recommend if we could get the votes tonight to get it in our pocket ready to go, just in case we need to go to market for these notes, only for cash flow purposes, given that right now I think our cash position is solid for the next 30 days. But much beyond that, we're not really receiving a whole lot of revenue across all funds, right? We haven't had a whole lot of activity. So right now we're kind of hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. So if that's the recommendation tonight, at least from the finance team.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
No.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
On the resolution for the authorization of tax anticipated notes for cash flow borrowing purposes, the motion carries 7-1.
All right, and we're going to continue the tradition of weekly moving on this Department of Neighborhood and Citizen Engagement report to the next meeting, and we will adjourn this meeting with no further business before the committee and see you on the next Zoom call.